welcome to Film Talk Weekly. This is your guest host, Castle Searcy with the Santa Fe International Film Festival. Today, I am here with Damian Conrad Davis, an actor. You're in LA right now?
Yeah, I'm
That's
in
where
Los
you live?
Angeles.
Okay,
Hmm.
welcome to the show. I
Happy to
know
be here.
you, well, I was introduced to you through a mutual friend slash family member, but I know you from The Offer, which I
Mm.
loved that show, and you played James
Oh,
Caan in that show, and I remember that actually. I love that show, and I'm a huge Godfather fan, so that was, I hunted that down and was sure to watch it. Just for frame of reference, what else have you worked on that we might know you from?
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned The Offer. I mean, that's one of my favorite things that I've been a part of. But other shows include Chicago Med, which is on NBC, Chicago Justice, another Dick Wolf NBC show, Young Rock, which was a story. It had 3 seasons. I played Ric Flair on that.
Yes, that I
Unfortunately,
haven't
just got
seen that, but
canceled.
it looks really funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was good, and it's a lot of fun. It's a fun take on The Rock. It's got a good sense of humor to it, and he's like running
Yeah.
for the presidency, and so it's just telling of his life. And so I was never a huge wrestling fan or anything, but I kind of dipped into that world, and so but I played Ric Flair, which is one of the most iconic wrestlers that there is. But so that's another one, and then got a couple movies coming out, and there's probably another couple shows in there that I'm not remembering. Couple, people, text me a lot because they see me on commercials and stuff like that. But, you'll have to keep your eye out to see which specific commercials those are.
Right, okay. So you're an actor. Have you been doing this your whole life? Is this what you always wanted to be? Give us start from the very beginning.
All right. Well, so yeah, I mean, the first I kind of have very slight memories of like wanting to be an actor as a younger kid, but I couldn't even. I've tried to think about this a little bit. Like I don't know where exactly that came from or where that idea came from, but I seem to like get this idea in my head at a younger age that I kind of wanted to do something like that, but I wasn't very proactive in pursuing that until it wasn't like in high school. I was living in Georgia at the time, and I was always like the class clown slash the kid that whenever we were reading a story in class, it would whether kids didn't want to read or they also just enjoyed because I'd always make up voices and make it fun and like I loved doing that. I couldn't wait to be called on to read in class where
Wow, you were the
some kids are
opposite.
singing.
You're the
Yeah,
opposite.
like some kids just like so they'd be like, "Oh, can Damien take my turn?" And I was always more than happy to do so. So that kind of morphed into that was like kind of where I would get kind of some of that in. But I had one of those teachers in one of my classes is probably a language arts class. She really encouraged me to go check out the drama program. And I was a three-sport athlete in high school, which I was at a very big high school. I think I was only one of two three-sport athletes. So very into sports. And I remember seeing the drama kids around, and having my own perception of what they might be like, and I think correctly so in some ways. But I went to just do this drama one class and just loved it. It was just an intro class. So there was like some of my football teammates were in there. There was, but there was also, I remember very distinctly, like our homecoming queen was in there who I had a big crush on. And, but I just remember it feeling kind of, even though we were doing Shakespeare, I kind of had a natural sense of like how to make something sound natural, which I think is kind of like a foundational point of acting, especially, you can go through the different, styles and, of acting throughout history. But um, I remember the teacher at some point, even like when some of the other kids are trying to, Damien, can you go show them how to do it? And I would, was obviously more than happy to do it. I think maybe some of that was born out of my dad was actually a TV sports anchor.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I think, some sociologists I know categorize that as an acting position. I mean, he did so much more than that. But, he was on TV every single night. He's charismatic. He would host, MC all kinds of events. I mean, he even did a couple of my pep rallies in high school, which I think I wanted to die during those. But you imagine your dad running the pep rally at your high school. Oh my gosh. My
But now
dad,
it's so cool. That seems so cool now.
no, I mean, it was
Yeah.
great. I mean, I was always like half very proud and
Yeah.
like half like, you know how it is. Like everyone else thought he was pretty cool. But I mean, I can remember distinctly, he's getting all pumped up and he's wearing a suit and he lays on the ground on the gym floor at some point. Like I forget what the circumstance was. But anyway, so I would say that I had a very, I had that kind of as kind of a basis of like someone who to look up for that was a performer.
Yeah.
Um, and my dad was always very encouraging to like, hey, if you want to, he was a sports anchor, right? And I would play a lot of sports, but he was always like, hey, if you want to play music or if you want to be a singer or something, like do all that stuff. He didn't really have any like, he didn't know of any classes, but anyway, so I'll get back on the story. I'm doing these drama classes, and I remember, University of Georgia came and they were giving a talk to kids about to go to college. I was in my junior year of high school, and I remember going up to my drama teacher and saying like, "Oh, I want to go to Juilliard." And to this day, I don't even really know why I even knew Juilliard existed. The only
From
thing I can
fame.
imagine is like Save the Last Dance is what I was in like.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that might be it, but
Yeah.
and she was like, "You should try,"
Mhm.
and I was like, great. So, before we get too excited, I did not go to
Okay.
Juilliard. But I remember having that idea at that age. But unfortunately, my family, we moved to Iowa when I was halfway through my junior year of high school. And so I had this drama teacher that liked me, and I was starting to get involved in this program. And then I moved to this small town in Iowa where there was no drama department or anything like that. And so, fortunately, there was the university that I attended, which is the reason my family moved there because my parents met there, and then my dad got a job there because he wanted to get out of TV. Fortunately, I was able to start taking like acting classes as like a senior in high school. I was able to go and get college credits and stuff like
Mm.
that. But kind of my whole like plan, if you could call it that, of like going to Juilliard again. Probably the only school that I think Juilliard was the only school I thought even had an acting program. I just had no idea, um, and so I ended up going to Grayson University. I was gonna move to LA after high school because I was so good at acting, which I wasn't. But is it I just didn't have the internet really back then. Like, I didn't have a playbook. It was just kind of you heard like
Yeah.
people just go to LA but because my dad worked at that university, I was able to get, pretty much paid for. So they were kind of like, why don't you do a few years, of college? And I thought, okay, that's prudent. Why don't I do that? But I wasn't even going for a theater major in the beginning, but I was doing all the theater classes. But I was like, let me get a communications major because that is what's going to set me up. But a couple of years into that, fortunately, my teacher Becky Foster, who I'm eternally grateful for, and she was like, "What are you doing? Do you want to be a professional actor?" I was like, "Yeah."
Hmm.
She's like, she goes, "Major in theater," and I was like, "That just seems like a bad idea." She's
Right.
like, "If you want to do it, do it." And so I did do it. I ended up graduating with my BA
So your
in
parents
theater
aren't trying
performance.
to like steer you towards a sensible major like you were doing at your school.
I so lucky.
Yeah.
Like I saw that with kids at my school,
Hmm.
where parents were threatening, they would like get into the theater department a little bit like, oh, we like this. And
Hmm.
parents were threatening to pool money, like, oh, you
Yeah.
got to also get a business degree, which
Yes.
I
Yes.
understand, but it's also, I mean, I was so lucky that my parents, like, this is so hard to do
Yeah.
when you have a supportive network like my family
Yeah.
is. I can't imagine the people that are having to fight their parents every day. Like, hey, please let me do this. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
know it's
Yeah. And it
I'm
doesn't
stupid
work.
or
It doesn't work. Like I mentor young creatives and like
oh, nice.
it comes up no matter what. Like,
Mm,
you can try to fight it and go to business school and all that,
right.
including myself. I fought
Mm,
being a creative and artist and like, it always comes up. Like
yeah.
it's not going to go away.
If it's in
Yeah.
there strongly, I think
Yeah.
that you know for at least for me, yeah, I actually did, just to that point, I when I was about to graduate, I came out to LA to work at a camp here. It's called Idlewild Arts Camp. It's like 2 hours outside of LA, but I'd never been to California, so I wanted to come over a summer. You know, I was living in a small town in Iowa, so I wanted to come and check it out. And I I kind of got spooked. I met a couple, actors that were like probably to me they seemed ancient. They were 28, 29 years, but we're maybe even 30 or 40, but like,
Yeah.
there were kind of the everyday getting parts of grind of an acting and like you see that kind of part of it and I got a little spooked and I had, a girl I was dating at the time really was asking me all the hard questions of like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to live? And I was like, I had this mentality, like I think a lot of people do, like, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But she just really asked me all those questions and it spooked me to the degree that I spent my last year, my 5th year of college actually, um, doing all the prerequisites to go to architecture school.
Mm.
And so I, despite having gone through this theater degree and like, feeling very strongly about that, and there's a little regret I have about this, but ultimately I think it kind of has, so I got all, I started doing calculus and, design and drawing and art history, which I loved. I mean, I didn't love the calculus, but I
Yeah.
did all these prereqs. And so when I, graduated and I moved to Chicago, that's where this girl I was dating at the time was living. And I, fell in love with that city. I was full in on going and I got accepted to a grad program to do architecture. But fortunately, I had a buddy, I was working as a tour guide in downtown Chicago. And of course, there's a bunch of the actors from the local colleges get jobs there. And they were auditioning. And part of me was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not doing that. The part of me was always like, oh, fortunately, this guy, my buddy Ryan Lemke, he said to me, he's like, you know what? I knew you're gonna go to like you're gonna move to Boston or whatever, you're gonna go to architecture school but there's this play that I'm in. It was touring around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, we're going here and here and here. I was like, that sounds awesome. I was like,
Yeah.
he's like, I can get you an audition. And so I auditioned for it. I didn't have a headshot, because I was just not in that world anymore. But I went and auditioned and I got that role. And that's kind of it. That was kind of like, part of me thinks, wow, I wasted a few years like not getting into acting right away. But the more positive spin I've put on it is I saw that I could do something else. I saw that there was that possibility. I saw that I'm not limited to this or that.
Yeah.
And then I saw also that my real desire to stay in this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, ironic, because my buddy now he now is like a computer programmer for NVIDIA and is doing very well.
Okay.
And I was like, man, you bet. Oh, I'm sorry, you pulled me back into it, and then you
Yeah.
got out, and you have this great career and everything. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. But
Yeah.
anyway,
What was the
so
name of the play?
it's called Letters Home, and I would have to see, it's probably still touring, but it's at Griffin Theater Company, which is a little theater, a pretty a bigger one of the bigger non-union or not non-equity theaters in Chicago. Which Chicago's theater scene is robust and beautiful and amazing, and has shaped me in so many ways, and I'm so grateful for it. But that show specifically, brought me into it. It was a little bittersweet because I had to shave my head because we were playing like military personnel, so I was always having a shaved head, and I was going all these auditions like looking like a Marine. But and I gave all these amazing performances, I think, but like all around the country. So it's like that play. It's like I never got like a Chicago theater reviewer to be like,
Right. Right.
So anyway, but it was a treat, and I couldn't be more grateful. And I still friends with a lot of people here, even in LA, that I met through that show.
Cool.
Anyway,
We're gonna take a quick break.
yeah, I kind of ready to see if you can fit that in.
All right. So when we left, you were in Chicago, right? But then now you've got this acting role in a play that's around the country. So now you're touring around the country for how long?
So that it was just little spurts. So we'd go like a month at a time, and so we would do like 13 cities in a month, which it was cool because I kind of got to feel like maybe what a rock star felt like, but like just not the glamorous version of it.
Mm-hmm.
But just the exhaustion of, because also we're like this theater company from a smaller theater company from Chicago. So you were flying with like 13, 14 people. So it's not like we're getting the most choice flight times. It's like sometimes we had to be up at like 4 in the morning, and so you're just being tired and being in a new city. Like I think it's built a little bit in me, like an empathy for people who do work on the road, and like some of like the weird idiosyncrasies that you hear about, like of the they want to, I heard, what is it, Prince had his whole like, room looked the same every time. Like I could see where you get a little bit like, wait, where am I today? Where do I
Yes.
go today? Where do I eat today?
Yes.
So but so I did that on a number of different, through for maybe 3 years, like
Oh, wow.
either it'd be like twice a year, but it would just be twice a year for like a month, or
Okay.
something like that. So um but anyway, so that was the play that got me into it, and then I started doing just auditioning and participating in theater in Chicago in
Hmm.
general,
Okay.
which again I maintain as a amazing place for artists, and amazing place to like really become who you want to be as an art. Like you're really challenged to be an artist in that town. It's not, you know, LA's got that, but it's also got like the entertainment. Like Chicago, like a lot of it's like there's obviously the entertainment stuff, but it's like we had this idea, and to I believe in this, like really we're doing important work, and we want to put up work that's like really going to make people think and change their minds about certain topics or expose them and stuff like that. So um, that's what I was doing until I then I went to get an agent, and because that's the next thing you do. And I remember the agent, I did my audition for her. She's like, okay, great, I'll rep you, but I'll only rep you for theater, because have you done any film or television? I
Hmm.
was like, not really. And so she's like, go do some stuff and then come back to me. And so I remember it was at least 6 months or a year, I just did any and every little student or independent film that I could find. And
In
fortunately,
Chicago. This
yeah,
is
so like
in Chicago.
yeah, so
Hmm.
fortunately there's like Columbia College, Chicago, there's DePaul, there's Northwestern. Um, they're all, these students, the young filmmakers are, need actors. And so
Hmm.
that's what I was doing. And that after, after I did probably, five or six or seven of those in a year, I, took all that footage back to my agent, and she was like, okay. And then I remember within a month or so, I had an audition for a TV show, and I couldn't believe that I was auditioning for a TV show. I just getting that email that was like whatever it was, Chicago Fire or something. I couldn't fathom that I was even having an audition for this.
Cool.
And I remind myself of that
Yeah.
because, now that I've been on, I don't know, 8 or 9 TV shows, I don't know, but like it, I have to remember how much I was so grateful to even get the audition,
Yeah.
much less ever even dream about booking it,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
but that was so I remember when I finally did book, I had two agents. I booked one, and I booked a show, and I couldn't. It was just probably like maybe two different lines, but it was in 2 episodes, so it was nice, and a little bit more than that. And I remember it was, just surreal, just on set. Just having those moments of like, oh my, oh, I'm in the trailer now, and I'm like, what, I always tell
Yeah.
people it's so funny because like you're just this guy off the streets, and you kind of get there, and then you get there, and if you're depending on where you are on the totem pole, you're not necessarily treated like royalty, but you're treated well, and people are like, what do you want for breakfast? You're like, what do you got? Like, what do you want? And you're like, oh shoot. Okay. And then, but then I always laugh, they just kick you out on the street at the end and say, yeah, don't come back in here.
Right.
So always in the nicest way. But
Yeah.
after I did a few of those shows, because I really wanted to live in Chicago long term. I loved that city so much. And I met my girlfriend at the time, my girlfriend I met out there, and who's now my wife. We met out there. We both wanted to live there. But I remember thinking when I was like 29, I was getting to 30, and I was like, wow, like, I, used to think I would never even get on one of these shows, and that would be it. But also Chicago Med was like my first big guest star role where, I
Hmm.
was shooting for a long time. I had a big part in the episode, and I got to know a lot of the leads in the show, and I realized they all lived in Los Angeles. And I was like, wow, all the leads of all these shows are LA based. And the best we're going to do as Chicago actors is maybe you get a little stint here and there. And so that kind of saw the writing on the wall. I said, wow, I guess. And also, once you've done a few of the shows, the pile of shows that you can do is shrinking. And so
Right.
I kind of said, I guess I have to go to LA. And I remember we had just been dating for a while. I was like, I have to move. And she agreed. She's like, let's go do it. And it was hard to do at 30, moving to a new city, from a
Yeah.
city that we loved. And she was so like supportive, but even through that, we're nurturing this new relationship while also moving across the country, while,
Yeah.
losing our friend groups and our,
Hmm.
changing jobs. And so I got to LA, and unfortunately, once I got here, I'd never wanted to come to LA. I was maybe intimidated by it, but also, all the things that people say about LA, that, reasons not to be here. There's a lot of factors, especially if you compare like Chicago to LA.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons maybe not to want to live here. But overall, I said, I wish I would have come here sooner, because, the energy for making film and creating is big, and so I felt like I was meeting a lot of people that, even if they're not actors or anything, it's like, wow, you guys are all like, there's a big respectable industry here, whereas in Chicago it felt like, we're the starving artists that are pushing through, and we don't care if we're not going to make any money, we're putting the show out there. And I agree with all that stuff, but there
Yeah.
becomes a reality at a point where I remember I did 2 shows in a row in Chicago, and I was also working full time, and I just remember being dead at the end, because I was getting paid nothing from these shows. I mean, I was getting paid something, but it was
Yeah.
not enough to live on, and so I was just like, my tank is empty. I don't know.
Where were you
I can't
working
live
full
like this.
time in Chicago? Well,
So I was working as a tour guide.
oh, okay.
Well, I had 2 jobs actually. I was as a tour guide downtown Chicago on a Segway,
Uh-huh.
which I again, when I got that job, I thought I was the pinnacle of work. To be able to be on a Segway going around down outside in the summer, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I love that so much. And then I also had a job where what I do more in the winter months, where I was a standardized patient, which it's funny, Seinfeld Kramer does
Yes,
this
I
at
know
one point.
exactly what you're gonna say.
Yeah. So we would act out like
Yes.
it's a great
You know
way
what?
to
I
like
saw an ad for it recently in Denver for one, and I sent it to my
for
friend.
standardized patient.
We're huge Seinfeld fans, and I sent it, and I'm like,
Oh,
we could do this. And he's like kind of an actor also, and so
sure.
like,
It's exhausting, but
uh-huh.
it was amazing. I mean, if it wasn't like so many in a row, it would be great. But you really do have to, because it's like a one-on-one or one-on-three performance.
Yeah.
And when you can get someone, and I know it's not just me that was able to do this. A lot of the actors were, it's not like I have some special powers, but when you're getting into the role, and I'm playing like a guy that's getting the cancer news and stuff like that,
Oh,
and like you kind of got to the point, you had these doctors, and like you realize they don't all handle it the same. And and some doctors are very good, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Some are like, well, that stinks, kind of thing. You're like, and like you really want to hit those, because this is they're training to be able to tell people in real life. So you want to give
right.
them this scenario, but you just have people that, like, doctors that start to break down and cry, because you're just giving this performance. And like we would give them feedback on certain days, and they come in, and I remember sometimes they would come in like, man, I know this is fake, but it just felt so real. Like I just, and like that was so much motivation to like
Nailed it. Yeah.
each time keep doing it. And again, it's not just me that was doing it.
Wow.
We'd swap stories, but it's great because you're giving this performance. And when you're up that close in person, it's good film practice, I think, because the theater, you're so big, but film, you're having this conversation here, and you're like, and they're reading you, and they're trained to be reading all the things that you're doing, and like you have this backstory, but you got to play this illness, and you got to like respond, and you're improvising. So there's a lot of like really specific acting skills that can come out of that. And this is exhausting though too, crying 8 times in a row all
It's
day, that
probably just
it's
a really good
exhausting.
experience for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool, and there's
What
all
does it
actors
pay?
doing it.
Like, well,
Oh, it was like 20 an hour or something like that. That was 2000, and what was that, 2014, 15, 16, something
yeah.
like that. So yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, it
didn't
was,
know it was
but
a real thing until
yeah,
recently,
I know.
actually. I saw it like on a job post or something. I don't know. But
No,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're like coughing, they have, screens watching you, but like again, it's just like the actor in you is like, you take a pride in it.
Wear makeup too, like the
Yeah,
cirrhosis
yeah. So if
and
you
Seinfeld.
have to learn about, if you have
Right.
like, if some people are like in abusive relationships, or like there's like spots they're seeing, and so they do a whole exam on you actually.
Right.
And so you try to control your breathing, try to give them, they know that it's, you can't
Yeah.
fake, lung cancer, but
Yeah.
although I got close, it really helped me going to doctors too. Now, like where I go in, I know that, like I tell it to everyone as a public service announcement, ask as many questions as possible, and offer whatever you can to a doctor, because it's amazing how you'll say something and they'll go, wait, oh, what? You know, and when they hear that, then they figure it out because they're investigating,
Yeah,
full on. And so when I go to doctors, I'm like, I'm gonna tell you this, that.
right. I think most people
Like,
are, a lot of people are afraid of doctors
well, my wife, she's
and
like, oh, I don't tell
withhold.
them how
Yeah,
much I drink. I'm like, I always tell them exactly how much I
yeah,
drink. I'll go through the like,
right.
oh, what, 3 drinks a week? That's a
Yeah.
lot. It's
And
like,
I think
okay.
they know most people are probably lying or fudging, There's probably like
Yeah, but I'm like, I'm
statistics.
telling you
Yeah.
the truth,
Yeah, so they probably think yours
so
is more even, but
yeah, no, they're
yeah.
just multiplying. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this guy's got a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Real quick, so how did you get an agent? Like, what's that process like? I think people like to know. You said you just went and got one. I'm guessing it's
Right.
not
Well, I had to
these.
audition for that one show, but that was because the same buddy who had kind of coaxed me back into acting.
Mhm.
Um, he was with this agent. They all went to college there, so they were able to get agents like right out of college. They kind of
Mhm.
knew the landscape, and so since I was kind of getting into it, but a lot of agents, especially like the more top tier ones, if you want to call it that, it's just by recommendations. You have to know someone that's going to give you a conversation, but in the beginning, you have to audition. Generally, I think just so, if you have nothing to show them, especially when I was a theater actor, there was nothing to like show.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's my. But so then in LA, when I came back, I thought, you moved to LA, and I really had to kind of start over. And I probably went a year or so. Like probably took me a year to get an agent, and to the point where I started just emailing my resume and stuff. And I had done a few shows. I had felt like I had good momentum when I was in Chicago. Like any big movie that was coming there, I was auditioning for, and so you get in that mindset. And then I came to LA, and you realize, the infrastructure here, no one knows me, and like also everyone here like has a lot of credits, and so it's a bigger market, bigger fish for sure. And so that I remember my manager, who I still have, Venture Entertainment Partners, Ray Miller. He's like, I'll meet with you, and he was like, well, let's do it, and then he took another year for him to, or year or so, to get me an agent. So he
Wow.
was able to submit me, and I booked a few TV shows just through him, and then in between there, somehow I got a commercial agent. That was a recommendation through someone. I got a couple, but I definitely had a few meetings with agents that I thought, that is a slam dunk. I feel like I'm charismatic with people, and I'm friendly, and I have good credits, and didn't work with me. For there's I'm not going to get into it, but all kinds of reasons why, and you just got to take that for that's how it is. And but so I've had my current agent for a few years now. But so then I got to LA. I finally got, like, I booked a few TV shows in a row, and then I remember I was like, finally, I'm like, awesome. And then pandemic hit, and then I was
Oh,
back to like, oh my gosh, all the momentum that I thought I was building, it felt like I was building. And then and it was weird because the pandemic really changed a lot, because I was so used to going in for these auditions like everybody was in Chicago. I really knew the casting directors.
yeah.
They see them all the time. And then I got to LA, and I was starting to go into the same offices, and I was still getting my bearings on the city. And then it became all self tape, and then it, unfortunately, one of the things that I think is lost is just being able to like know, like, oh, I've auditioned for you before, like, so easily, as opposed
Mm.
to like, oh, there's a name. Have I been? And so, now it's just names and logos rather than buildings and people. And so that's been an adjustment. And so I felt like that kind of, set me back a little bit, but, like, set everybody back a little bit.
But
But,
you can do more self-tapes though, right? Were you doing more auditions because it was self-tape?
well,
Or,
after the pandemic, yes, and so
yeah.
and that's been like a double-edged sword, I think, because I think every actor probably has a love-hate relationship with self-tapes, because
Yeah.
you get to control it, you get to do it when you're feeling good. You don't have to drive across town. You don't have to be a little nervous to go in the room
Hmm.
or think about, do I got my lines? If you mess it up, you can tape it again. The other
Yeah.
side of that is, you really have to learn how to direct and produce these things,
Yeah.
which, it's, if you look at from the beginning to now, everyone's probably come a long way, but I'm in my studio now. I got light setups, I got microphones, I got camera, and so sometimes you have technical difficulties. Sometimes you just got to find a reader to come read with you, and
Right.
so there's pros and cons, and I don't know which I would prefer. I think I like kind of like the first audition this way, and then going in, and
And
because
like,
it
how
is,
do you know when it's done? Because you could probably
right. Oh my gosh.
tape it like 10 times, or
Oh, and
till
I
it's
always,
perfect. And
oh, right. And you're looking at yourself and you're critiquing yourself in a way that
yeah,
no one else is. And
yeah,
everyone goes through that kind of like, okay, I'm gonna do 100 takes, and then to like maybe now I'm like, I'm gonna do five, maybe
yeah,
six, and be like, whatever I got out of that, that's enough.
yeah,
It's not gonna be perfect. It's an audition after all. When I
right.
first started auditioning in Chicago, you like my agent instructed me have the script in your hands at all times to always be signaling to the casting director, remember, I just got this 2 days ago. This isn't a finished product. That was
Uh-huh.
kind of the idea. Is like I'm still working on this. I'm still figuring it out too. You're seeing what I can do in a day and a half or two
Yeah.
days. But now, then it slowly morphed into like be memorized,
Yes, I've
which is a
always
whole nother
I've
skill
heard
to
that from
develop.
casting directors is memorize. Yeah.
Yeah, now and I wouldn't want to go to an audition not memorized now,
Hmm.
because, you can just do it better. But, there's always, unfortunately, there's that barrier of just like you have a few days and in the new agreements, we get a little more time now and stuff, but you have a few days to pull this off, regardless of all the other things you have to do. And so just memorizing it sometimes, you're like, man, I wish if I had 2 more days, I would really be able to do it. But, everyone's in the same boat, I guess. But anyway.
Yeah, so you got work in LA, and then like what was the next like milestone you would say? Like,
Right. So, I did a few TV shows like pre-pandemic, and then like as the pandemic was ending and everything was kind of coming back, I booked the show called The Offer on Paramount Plus, which is about the
I
making of
love
The
it. Yeah.
Godfather,
Yeah.
which is, it was, so many stars in that. And I remember when I was reading for James Caan, who plays Son, who's Sonny, who's obviously James Caan's a huge movie
Yeah.
star.
Uh,
And then my hair was like kind of long down to my shoulders, and like it didn't really look that. But I remember when I was like auditioning for James Caan, I remember the guy has such a swagger, and I
yeah.
was like, I love when I get to like do something like this, like just walk around with a swagger,
Yeah.
and so that audition, I remember there's like a faux pas that I wasn't sure if I was breaking, but they're eating at this table,
Yeah.
and I remember in the audition I actually said, you know what, I'm gonna eat a bowl of spaghetti here. I'm gonna do it. I don't care. Like it is one of those moments where you're always like trying to please and impress people in all these auditions, but this one I remember I was like, I don't care. This is how I'm gonna give a good performance, and I want to do it, and I'm just gonna have fun and do this. And I did that, and I also, you struggle, you just get it in. You always feel like you're lucky to get it in. And when I booked that was a big deal for me because it's this big show that's a limited series about one of the best movies ever made with a big time cast, Miles Teller, and
Yeah.
so it was being on that set, and then it's strange when it's happened to me a lot. Oh, I forgot I was on that show Homecoming too. I forgot that. The main reason I remember that one, is because I was with Joan Cusack and I
I
got to hang
know.
out with
I
her
saw
for two
that.
days.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
And it was just like,
yeah.
when you actually get the time to like be put in a room with just you, one other person, and Joan Cusack, like you can't get that time any other way. And so for 2 days in a row, just talking for
Yeah.
days, and she's just a lovely, awesome person. And so,
Oh,
and I had, I was a huge fan of Shameless, and so I'd just
yeah.
been watching that and like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I've been around. I shot a show in uh, Mexico called Coyote and Michael Chiklis. I remember it was in Mexico, and usually like you go to lunch and you're trying to find like people of your rank, so to speak. Like who are the other? I'll sit with. But I was there, and everyone, like most of the cast and crew, are all Mexican, and so they're all speaking Spanish, and I was like, I'm gonna go sit with the English speakers, and it was like Michael Chiklis and a few other actors, and I think he kind of looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" Then I was like, I can't talk to anyone else. So it's like, but he was obviously very gracious
Yeah.
and really like a charismatic. Like you see some people, you're like, I see why this person's a star because they're just like, they're charismatic, they're good storytellers, they're
Yeah.
friendly. But Miles Teller was one where is interesting because he was producing the show, helped one of the producers on the show, but also, in the scene with me. And that's kind of an interesting dynamic because on one end you're my boss, but also I have to like for me to be able to do what I do as an actor, I got to look at you as like an equal actor, and I think they
Hmm.
would
Yeah. How do
probably
you
want
do
that.
that?
But well, for me, what was really nice for me is I I'm not a method actor, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think any actor has some way of like making sure that they can stay in touch with their role or be in their role. And, some things I've done where it's like between takes, I'm just totally. So James Caan is a fun person to come to set as. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
just like you're just getting into the walk of it as you're walking to set and you're being around, you're just trying to like make sure you got all, things you've worked out. And so it's like, hey, so it's like I would just kind of like embody James Caan, and like that guy is confident. That guy's like, you don't
yeah,
mess. So I was like in that body of him, in that suit of James Caan,
yeah,
I'm able to channel like really in a lot of ways we're similar people in that way. And so he kind of let that part of my personality come. So when I get to that room, I just said, listen, you know what? I don't care if I'm nervous or if I'm worried I'm gonna step on someone's toes. Like, listen, I'm here to do a scene. He's here to do a scene. Like, we're here to make good show. And so the only way that's gonna work is if I'm in it and committed. And
you're all
so I
in.
remember
Yeah,
it was a moment where he comes in and my character, and I also was thinking, okay, what is my character to his character? That's really what's going to set the
right.
relationship.
Yeah,
And so since, James Caan, he comes in, I remember and I just like smacked him on the butt, like just totally like, because like this is 100% what James Caan would do, in my opinion,
yeah,
in this scenario. And so if anyone were to say, what are you doing, hitting him? You're just smacking Miles on the butt.
yeah.
I would be like, listen, if you don't think James Caan would do that, you tell me now. But I've done a lot of research on this dude. And this seems like something he would do. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys had a mooning competition, and my butt's actually on that TV show for that reason. But that was another. I had to moon him. But being around people like that, and he was really friendly. Like he came up to me after the scene, and like I always when I have a moment like this happen, I always make sure I tell my wife. I'm not good at like writing it down necessarily, but I always tell my wife because she's got a good memory. But I remember, and so it's funny because she'll remind me of these things sometimes, and I'm like, "What are you talking? Oh yeah." So it's she's like my memory bank for this stuff. I remember we were done with the scene, and we had this whole day we were filming together, and I'm just talking to the guy that played Fredo, and we'd kind of Nick Pupo, we'd become buddies, and I get a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it was Miles Teller, and I was like, "Oh hey, what's up?" And he goes, "I just want to say, great work today, really." Great. You're some version of that. I don't want to misquote
Yeah.
him or anything, but it was like great, really good job, something like that. And so those moments, you have to kind of try to remember when, when you don't get then this audition and that audition, or
Yeah.
you're always thinking, should I even be doing this? Like, does people even want to see me do this? And so, but so to be able to be on that stage with like that level, Maverick was coming out for him and everything. I was like, man,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think I can hang. I can hang
yeah,
with him. You always want to know if you can hang in the scene.
yeah,
So, but The
yeah.
Offer, I mean, it's a show that I'm so proud of, and like as a fan, just was like
Yes.
loved the show.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
like even if I
Well, I
wasn't in
love the
this, like
show. I love the movie. I love everything about
right. Oh my,
it's
and
all
I mean, for my
yeah,
homework for that is to be familiar with James Caan and The Godfather. Like,
yeah,
come on, I probably did too
yeah,
much homework, just
yeah,
because you're like,
yeah.
this is fun. I'm watching this again because it's my homework,
What was the
Jackie.
faux pas? Like you're not supposed to eat in the scene?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of things about auditions that I don't actually eat. Don't use a prop. Don't like everyone's got a different thing, and like the rules are don't dress. So dress suggestive of the character. Don't dress in a full thing that the character would have. But then some people are like, hey, I got a cop uniform. I wear it to these auditions. I don't,
Yeah.
but people do. And so in my mind, I don't know if it's true, but like for something, there was something to me like, oh, it's totally a faux pas to actually be eating in an audition. But
Especially
I was just,
spaghetti, maybe. Like would
yeah,
be
spaghetti, where it's
it's
just like, but
dangerous. Yeah.
it's such a part of this scene, that it
Yeah.
was like, I gotta, all my lines are
Did you
focused around. It's like,
practice eating the spaghetti ahead of time?
no, the thing
Like
is,
how you were gonna twirl it or like how you were
that's
gonna
the thing.
yeah.
Okay, so one of the things when I read The Offer that was so awesome too is I read a ton of scripts, and there's a whole spectrum out there of like level. When I read The Offer, it was so well written. Like there's certain things that I've read. Another show Made. I don't know if you ever. I didn't actually get into that show, but like the Netflix show Made. I remember reading that script. That was another experience. I was like, this is
Yes,
so well
I
written.
did.
But The
Watch
Offer.
that. Yeah.
I remember reading it. I was like, this is so well written, and the scene's so done well that it's like when you have something like that, it makes acting a lot easier. And so I was just like, I'm gonna live as this guy. You know,
Yeah.
because when you have a real person you're playing, it's so clear of
Yeah.
what that is
We
that
want
it's
to be
like,
that guy. I want to be that guy. Like,
oh,
yeah,
everyone, when I get to be on
definitely.
set,
Yeah.
like, what was
Yeah.
really cool is we
Yeah.
shot at Paramount, like, we shot at some of the locations where they would have shot some of the movie, well, but, I mean, we're in this back lot, we recreated some scenes, and I'm strutting around, and some of the people that, knew James Caan, had worked with James Caan, like, I remember the makeup and the hair lady, they
Yeah.
knew him, they call him, Jimmy. No
Yeah.
one calls him James Caan. They call him Jimmy. And so, people just being like, "Wow, you are this guy."
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
like, and I was like, that is like, obviously that's the best compliment
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
get.
Totally.
But and it's very when someone tells you that, you're like, oh, I'm leaning into this then. And so when
Yeah.
you get to walk around as James Caan on a
Yeah.
set, oh my
Yeah. That's
gosh,
all,
just
the next best thing to being in the actual movie. Yeah. Like the
oh, I
best.
know. It's
Yeah.
oh man, that
Hmm.
we kind of felt like as we recreated some of the scenes, you're like, wow, I can't believe we're
Yeah.
recreating this scene,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you get to see the cars come in, and you get to see all the
Uh-huh.
costumes, and you're just like, this is
Uh-huh.
crazy, and so everyone was kind of geeking out, like everyone,
Yeah.
that got to be in that. So
So that's on Paramount Plus, right?
that's on Paramount Plus. Last
Yeah.
I checked, that
Yeah.
was kind of one of the
I feel like
they were
I'm
coming out.
ready to rewatch it after this
I
conversation.
know, me too.
It's
Like I
so
just
great.
like
Yeah.
we had that kind of brings me into like the film I just shot. I don't know if you want me to jump into this, but
Yeah.
um, the War Between, which is still it's still being finished, and we went to Phoenix Film Festival and played it there, but kind of still reworking it as I understand. But first time was ever the lead in a feature length film, which I'd been the best friend, I've been leads of short films, but the lead of a you know, like a solid budget, like feature film. This is my first time, and the directors, they loved the director. She loved that show, The Offer, and so
Mm.
I mean, I think that was definitely one of the things that kind of helped me get the role for sure. But that we just shot. Yeah, it's a Civil War Western, so it's based in Arizona. And what was really so cool about that is we filmed it. It's based. It kind of the story gets its roots out of the westernmost battle that actually took place in the Civil War. And so we actually filmed in the location that this battle happened. And so that was really surreal. And again, really
I
cool.
think
We
a
have,
lot of people don't know there were Civil War battles over
I
here.
had no idea.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons the writer Ron Youngel wrote it, he had seen it somewhere, and he kind of was like, "What? This was happening out west."
Yeah.
And so there was California Cavalry, and you had the Texas, Confederates. But so we that anyway. I was wrapping it because that was they were excited, that I had been in that show. Oh, we've been watching that show, and like, no, oh, I can't believe you came and auditioned for us. And I was like, oh, I'm more than happy to be able to play this role, but
Yeah.
I can
Cool.
talk
So
more
it's
about
your
that role.
first, you're starring in a feature. And as a side note, I think it's set in Arizona, but it was filmed in New Mexico or parts of it
No,
were?
it's filmed in Arizona. Filmed in Arizona.
Oh, okay. Well,
One
the
thing you might
south,
have heard from me a while
the
is I
Southwest.
was, yeah, the Southwest, so
Yeah.
same general region.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first. There's new like Arizona. There were new Arizona tax credits that this is one of the first films to qualify
Okay.
for those.
Interesting.
I don't know that much about that, but
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we were in Phoenix, like, the director and writer were going on a lot of the local TV stations talking about this tax incentive. I don't know, I'm just the actor, but more than that. But so, but when we shot it, we went down, we cast it was cast on Zoom, or whatever, and self tape and then follow up via Zoom, and then we all went down, and I think I went out and met the director and the writer and my co-lead, and then we went down to Arizona, and we're embedded down in the desert for a month, and that was really awesome. It was a little challenging because I had a my son was like 2 months old at the time,
Oh, yeah.
but it was awesome because my character was away from his wife and son, so I was like, oh, let me use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Method acting of sorts.
so doing that though, I will say this, like, just as far as the journey of my career has, it kind of ignited something in me. I remember every day, like, it's what I realized early on in the process was the number one actor on the call sheet has can kind of set the tone, where people are a little bit like, I'm not a big star or anything, but it's still, you're kind of like the face of the show. You're in all the scenes. You set the tone with how is this guy gonna act or be, or and I remember like that was like a whole nother part of the job was, you know, uh, being positive with people. Like when things were getting hard, staying positive myself. Because, if you become a diva actor and you start, when things are falling apart, which in every project I've ever been on, something is falling apart. It doesn't, I don't care what the budget is. And so, when that stuff is inevitably happening, if they can look to me and I'm game, I'm smiling, it just became so apparent to me that that was important to do. And it was fun for me. I didn't have to fake anything. I mean, genuinely loved the people. I was genuinely grateful to be able to be in the role and to have all these people working together for something at the end of the day where it's primarily going to be your face associated with it, which is a whole nother thing. Because you're like, wow, if this movie's incredible, wow, I'm really gonna this is gonna be great for me. If the movie is terrible and I'm terrible, I can't run and hide from it, because you can't hide from it, which is also another aspect of like, oh wow, I really want everyone to be doing a good job,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's gonna maybe look bad or maybe look
Right,
good,
right. It's
and
kind of like you're
so
the
that.
captain of a team, sort of, when you're the
Yeah,
lead.
I mean, and obviously the director and the writer and the producer, they
Yeah.
have that, but like you have your own kind of like
Interest
captain of the
and
actors in a way,
yeah, and your attitude
and
matters and
yeah, and
setting an example.
yeah,
Yeah.
because
Right?
you
That
have
makes
people
sense.
come in, and I've been on sets where I'm the guy coming in for a few days, and like you got this whole family of people that have been working together for a while, and I know
Hmm.
that's like so like I tried when people came in to really like I try to sit with them at lunch because I always know how awkward that is to like find a place to sit
Right, right.
at the lunch table when you got like movie stars around. You're like, oh my gosh, can I be around them?
Yeah.
Or and so obviously I'm a less intimidating figure than a movie star, but yeah, I tried to just make sure they felt comfortable coming in and stuff like that, but also just I remember calling my wife, and just saying, I couldn't be happier. Like this is what I'm meant to be doing. Like this is what I do. Like, I've another part of my story going on, I was always had ADHD and was medicated at a young age, and part of the reason I was a class clown and disruptive, and but I remember thinking like this is like you have someone telling you where to go at all times.
Yeah.
All I had to do is focus on it. Like this is a perfect job for me. I was
Right.
like they're like
Yeah.
shuttling me where I need, like they're like reminding me to
Right.
drink water, like things that like I definitely forget to do. Like
Yeah.
they're making me eat. So it's like it seems a little much in the beginning, but then you realize like, oh, like to be able to focus on my part of it, it is nice to have an infrastructure of like,
Totally.
PAs or, whatever it is,
Yeah.
helping you. And because at first I'm like, oh, I can get my own water. Then you're like, by the end, you're like, bring me that water. You're right.
Yeah.
Because, that's the beauty of any, film or TV set is like just all the things that have to come together to make it work that,
Right.
obviously the actors are seeing, but it's just such a deep crowd of people that are making any one of these things happen. But that is, I hope, I always say, and, to be the lead in a movie, like I don't know if I'll ever get to do that again. Maybe I'll be the second lead or the third or fourth of a movie, but like to be the lead of a movie, that's such an honor and a privilege that I didn't take lightly. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to Deborah and Ron for making that a possibility for me, and I hope to do many more.
Yeah. And how will we see it? Like, when do you suspect it will come out?
Yeah, so that's a whole nother thing that
Yeah.
I'm learning about with this is so we did the festival, and last I was communicating with Deborah, the director, Deborah Correa, who's the director. She said they wanted to kind of go back and kind of tinker with it a little bit, so to speak. And so they're been talking. I know they had a meeting with Lionsgate recently. They're just kind of out there hitting the pavement, and it's her first feature film too. So she's kind of learning this as she goes. Like, wow, like all the work, and you always hear that,
Yeah.
like all the work to like get a film out there is a lot. And so, it, it I wouldn't expect to be able to watch it, probably for 6 months minimum.
Okay.
Just as far as that process goes, I'm hoping to be able to go to more film festivals, maybe Santa
Mhm.
Fe at the end of the year.
Yes, we'd
But
love to have you. Yeah.
this is a good plug for me to be able to get in there. But hopefully more film festivals in the future. But also, I know they would love to just kind of sell it and
Yeah, and
And
it's a great story, and I think a very timely story for what's all the division in America, and
oh my
people
gosh,
talking about.
that's what drew me to it. Like when I read
Yeah,
it, just people that are the Civil War is just we always think that the times we're in are like the worst, but like I don't think it gets worse in the Civil War as far as like
right.
the fracture in our country, and just just remembering the common humanity of everyone.
Yeah,
I think that's what that film is really
yeah.
about.
It's a
Is
really good message and story, and yeah.
yeah, I
Um,
mean
and you
it's
play a
beautifully
great,
shot.
like, tortured person. I think I saw some of your other reels. I think you play great at being tortured or injured. Um, and then also, I feel like you're a great comedic actor. Like, I
Oh
think
man,
you like
that's
really have like some comedic like future. Like, yeah, I mean, you've already done it, but I just really could see that.
yeah. I mean, comedy. I am passionate about. Like I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
comedy, and like we mentioned Seinfeld earlier.
yeah,
I love Seinfeld. Like
yeah, me
I'm
too.
so a fan of just the
We could
precision
do a
of
whole
the
show
writing and the
about
jokes.
Seinfeld. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, I'll talk to you forever about it. But like
yeah,
anyway, like so comedy I love and I think it comes very natural to me. And again, like I talked about earlier, like that was kind of like when people always act like I meet a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, I was shy, I could never talk. The only way I could ever express myself was through the theater. And I was not that person. I was, or some people were like, I love films so much, I just had to be in them. Me, it was like, I want to be the center of attention. This is fun. I need the attention. And like that was kind of what I was born out of in that. And
uh-huh.
once you go through theater school, like that still exists in me for sure. But
Yeah,
like in theater school, you learn and appreciate. I wouldn't stay in it this long for just that. I appreciate and like love and understand the value of storytelling, the value of sharing. I won't get into, but of so many experiences I've had that aren't that in the theater and stuff like that that you see the healing aspect of it or the power of telling stories and what that can do for people. And at the end of the day, that is big for me. And so I always had these big debates with my buddy. His name is Felipe Val Costa, and he was
what's his
a
name?
Felipe Val Costa. He was Portuguese. He was a series regular on the show Snowfall for a few
Okay.
years. But we went to this tiny little school together, and but he would we were always in school together. And I was like, oh, I love the Neil Simon. If you don't know who that is, like it's very comedic, like almost like a Seinfeld, like rapid jokes and stuff like that. And he's like into this like experimental, like kind of like intense, like so he kind of was bringing me like, oh, the theater is here to do this and that and that. And I was like, but also isn't it good for like people to like laugh and so where I'm at now with comedy is I think comedy is one of the best tools we have for broaching topics that are hard. And
Yeah.
it's when you're doing good comedy, you're all the important things that a drama does, the comedy does that. Plus, like people are having a fun time, which I think there's value in that as well. There's value to all these aspects of it. And so, but comedy, I love comedy. We
Yeah, I
another
would love
film
to
I
see you in more comedy. I think
oh
like
yeah, well
yeah, I feel like
call some people up.
you really shine in what I've seen of you in comedy. Yeah.
Yeah,
It seems really
yeah.
natural and like yeah,
It's
love
fun
it.
for me. I've actually gotten in the habit of making some. I have some people we work and we make some comedic sketches, and it's a fun way to keep doing it. And it's just I love just even sitting. I mean, I love this with any piece of text, any writing, especially like plays and stuff like that. Just tear it. I think this is you got to have this at your core if you want to be in the acting or the arts. Like you want to be able to just talk about just the few differences of a few different words in a line of and how that's going to change the meaning of a scene or a moment. And like my wife all the time is like, I can't believe you're thinking so hard about this tiny little thing. And I've realized that just being with my wife, who's incredible and like, but a little more type A and like can get things done and like extremely successful human being, but like realizing that me getting caught up in minutia, I was like, oh, that is like that's what our artist brain does, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah,
and maybe it's too much sometimes, but it's but but comedy is so good for that. Like just that finding that timing. The
yeah,
closest I've ever had to being a stand-up was when I was a tour guide in Chicago, and it kind
yeah.
of became a comedy routine. And
Right,
like
right.
you just learn
Yeah,
like where these little moments that you when you in theaters like that, you got the audience for a second, and like
yeah,
oh, there's nothing like that.
yeah, yeah.
Bring them along on that journey.
Cool. Well,
Well, hey,
I say
call
run.
everybody, let them
Yeah.
know, put me in some comedies.
I predict your future in comedy. Like,
You know who I want to write email to Adam McKay. I recently got his email, and I'm just gonna. I had a whole email written to him, then I didn't send it. But for those people that don't know, Adam McKay is Anchorman, Step Brothers, but also The Big Short, Don't Look Up, things like that. So I
oh
think
yeah.
he's just like
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
his
Oh,
range. I mean, how do you
yeah.
do Step Brothers and Anchorman and then The Big Short about the financial like
Right.
this guy is like my hero. Like I love
Yeah.
the way he shoots and everything. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But Adam McKay, like he's kind of that guy that like I think we'd be simpatico if we met. Like it's like, oh, we're very serious thinkers about a lot of things, but like at the end of the day, we love to laugh and like use that as our way in too. Because
I agree. I can see it. Yeah.
yeah, in comedy, just in life, it's the most fun. Like being around people. That's kind of like my
The
big,
most important thing, like
playground.
I only want to be around fun, funny people, you know? So,
Yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
I know. Well,
Like, I don't know, like serious people, it's fine. We need them, I guess, but yeah, I just want to be,
oh, and
I want to be around
well,
comedians all the time.
well, that's fun to be around a comedian, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, oh man, can we turn it off for a second? But like, but I mean, I think like one of my best friends here is like, a creative partner of mine. Like, he's a writer and he writes all comedy, but it's just his brain is so interesting. It's the way he's thinking. I think that's like comics really do well. Is
Yeah.
like thinking about everything and like really examining life, and that's
Yeah.
like I think
Yeah.
at the heart of what comedy is like
Totally.
really examining why are we doing the things that way that we're doing them, and
Yeah.
should we change? And that's kind of the
Yeah.
roots of
They're
theater are in that too.
observationists. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
awesome.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but
It's fun.
thanks for joining us, Damian Conrad Davis. We can find you. Is your Instagram open for following?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
At Damian Mon.
at Damian
It's all
Mon.
one. Yeah,
And you're on,
DAMIANMON.
okay. And you're
Is
on IMDb. We can watch The Offer on Paramount Plus. What else
hmm
can we watch? We can
You can
watch.
watch Young Rock, which on Peacock. You can
That
watch
sounds
Chicago
hilarious.
Med, which is I think Chicago Med's on Netflix now.
Okay.
Also, I'm revamping my website as we speak now in my downtime since the industry is kind of slowed. But I'll be having some more stuff on my website too. But I'm getting into directing a little bit too, so I'm messing
Oh,
around with
nice.
some people
Yeah.
around me. They're gonna have some things out. So, but yeah, give me a call.
Yeah. Yeah. And come down to Santa Fe.
Oh man, I know. Well, I didn't even get into this. I grew up in Albuquerque till I was
Oh,
7 years old.
oh, we should have known that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah. Till you were 7. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was 7. So all my first memories. My dad was. If anyone in Albuquerque knows, KOB TV Channel 4. My dad was a sports anchor there for like 10
Ah,
years.
cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, long time back in the
Yeah.
90s.
All right. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Thank you, Castle. This is so fun.
Yeah, it is so fun. Okay.
Yeah. And I love your background.
Oh, thank you.